Hello, hello, hello. Maybe I should actually look when I talk. Let's try that again. Hello, and welcome back to the channel. I thought that I know I missed Tuesday's video. I'm sorry. I apologize. I was traveling, and I just didn't happen, you guys. So I'll try and make it up to you. We are going to do my 2024 TBR. This is a very aspirational TBR, both in the sense that there's obviously more books than my reading goal, which is 50 for the year, but also because I'm a mood reader, so who even knows if I'm going to get to all of these, if any of them, because there's always new books coming out, and sometimes I'm just not in the mood. But I would like to make one of these videos this year because at the end of 2024, I want to see comparatively how many I actually read. So we're going to start, I have my handy dandy laptop here. We're going to start, I tried not to repeat some of the ones that I say in a lot of my videos. So those are still included, but the first one is Powerless by Lauren Roberts. It is a young adult fantasy romance that I've heard from everyone and their mom that it is so good. We're gonna kind of rapid fire through these because this video doesn't really need to be long, but I just need to be able to compare. For comparison purposes, it has to exist. So for the ones that I have a little something to say about it, I'll let you guys know. If not, we'll just keep the ball rolling. Does that work for y'all? Okay. So like I said, we have Powerless by Lauren Roberts. Then I have the Throne of Glass series by Sarah J. Maas. I have seen that everyone loves this, and I haven't heard that it's as spicy as A Court of Thorn and Roses. It's also more books, and the covers of these books, y'all, are gorgeous, 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 gorgeous. I believe the first book in the series is Throne of Glass. However, there's a prequel, which is, I want to say, Assassin's Blade. So I am hoping that somebody gets me those for Christmas because I did put them on my wish list. But if not, I'll take matters into my own hands and get them myself. So Throne of Glass series by Sarah J. Maas. Then I want to continue in the Magnolia Parks universe by Jessa Hastings. I've read the first book, so there's 4 more in that series that I have to read. Then I have Dead Romantics by Ashley Poston. She is the author of The 7-Year Slip, and I really liked her writing, and so I wanted to read more of her. Ruthless Vows by Rebecca Ross actually comes out at the end of 2023. I want to say it comes out December 26th. However, I didn't pre-order it, so I don't know if I'm going to be able to get my hands on it until next year. Plus, I'm trying to reach my Goodreads goal, so I'm kind of speed reading right now. And I feel like this book I need to give it the time, love, and attention that it deserves, so we're going to save it for next year. Butcher and Blackbird by Brynn Weaver. This, I believe, was actually recommended by Heather, and I saw it in a video on her channel, but it's a serial killer romance, which I thought was really interesting because I've never read, dark romance before, I don't think, especially not in that sense. So I just thought it would be an interesting take on the romance trope. Happy Place by Emily Henry, but only when it comes out in paperback. I refuse to buy the hardcover, especially number 1, since I don't know if I'm going to like it. Number 2, I've seen, I believe, in Europe, there are international versions that are paperback already, or maybe they were ARCs, but it's just so much cuter in paperback, and I don't want the big, chunky, hardback edition. Next is Never by Jessa Hastings. This is the same author of the Magnolia Parks universe. When I was in a bookstore in New York, they had it categorized under spicy, which I wasn't aware of because Magnolia Parks wasn't spicy, so I didn't expect Never to be, especially since it's a fantasy retelling of Peter Pan, but allegedly it is, so I don't know how I feel about that. Also, the paperback version is kind of huge, and huge in the sense of it almost looks like a large print edition, except it's not, it's just normal. I also saw when I was just skimming through it at the bookstore that it has footnotes. And so for all those reasons, I'm not entirely sure, but the concept is really intriguing to me, and the cover is gorgeous. So I want to pick it up, but we'll see what happens with that. Then I have the Prison Healer series by, oh, I didn't write who it was by. Let me look it up real quick. By Lynette Noni. Sarah Caroli read this series, or at least one of them, and the covers are so cute to me. And so I was like, oh, well, I typically like a lot of the things that she recommends. So I was like, oh, I'll pick it up because it's a good fantasy series. I'm really in a fantasy mood right now. So I think you'll see a lot of these are fantasy. But I actually went and read the synopsis, and it's a high stakes political fantasy. Now, they don't categorize it as a political fantasy, but you can tell that the politics are going to play a pretty big role, and it's also a trilogy. And so I prefer to read fantasies that are at least a duology, just because then you know that the world building is going to be sufficient. Because sometimes when it's one book, the world building is like very quick, and then they get into kind of the plot. Or it's vice versa, where there's tons of world building and not enough plot. So I like when there's multiple books in a fantasy series, because then you know that you're getting either multiple perspectives or just everything's going to be, hopefully, allegedly, well fleshed out. So the Prison Healer series also has a blurb by Sarah J. Maas, and it said on Goodreads that this is great for fans of Sarah J. Maas. Again, I've never read Sarah J. Maas, but assuming that I like the Throne of Glass series, which I'm anticipating that I will, this seems like a really good series for me. Next, another series is to reread the Cruel Prince trilogy. This is an enemies to lovers romantasy. I read it at the beginning of 2023, and I've just been seeing randomly like a lot of reviews about it and a lot of commentary about it. I think a lot of people included it in their wrap-up videos for the year. And it just reminded me how much I like that book, so I want to reread all of them because I was enraptured by that book that I was like eating it up, reading. I read through all three, I think, within 1 month, so I read them back to back to back. And typically if I like a fantasy series, unless I literally just cannot get it out of my mind, which actually is happening to me now with the One Dark Window series, but unless I can't get it out of my mind, I like to space it out so I can actually enjoy the book. And have some form of like delayed gratification and just expand my experience, like lengthen my experience. But I couldn't do that with Cruel Prince. I just was eating it up. So I want to reread that so I can really sit and enjoy it and annotate it and all those things. Then I also, by Holly Black, have Book of Night. I actually didn't know that she had an adult fantasy book until I was in Target the other day, and I just randomly saw it there. And apparently it's her debut into adult fantasy, and it's modern dark fantasy. I don't remember anything else from the blurb, but I know that I like Holly Black's writing style, so I assume if I really liked her YA writing, I would really like her adult fantasy writing, so I want to pick that up this year as well. Then this one's another one that I've had on my list a few times, but I continue to write it so I don't forget it. I want to read Before the Coffee Gets Cold. I'm not even going to attempt to say the author's name because I know that I'm going to butcher it. But that's kind of time travel fantasy. So I want to read that one. Then Fractal Noise by Christopher Powlin. I recently learned that Christopher Powlin also does young adult fantasy books, which I thought was interesting. And I think if he's able to successfully do young adult fantasy, which it seems that he is because it seems that his books are kind of popular in that genre, that he would be a really good sci-fi writer because a lot of sci-fi is very technical. And if you're able to build that kind of, if you're able to just have good world building, honestly, because obviously at the end of the day, there's only a certain amount of, not mysticism, I don't know what I'm thinking of, like, you can only create so much fiction when you're dealing with science fiction, unless you are creating a new type of science and its own parameters and all those things. It's kind of hard to be in the science fiction genre without having a lot of reality in it, you know what I mean? So I'm hoping that because he's able to, it seems, successfully write in the fantasy genre, that his sci-fi will be really, really compelling, even more so than what I've read in sci-fi so far. Next is Billy Summers by Stephen King. I believe Billy Summers is an assassin, and I know what this is about, but for some reason it's escaping me right now. Let's see what the blurb says. Oh, okay, cool. Oh, Hitman for Hire. That's what it was. I wanted to read that. It just seemed really intriguing. I know, who read it earlier this year? Somebody I watched on BookTube read it earlier this year and seemed like they really liked it. So, Billy Summers by Stephen King. I want to reread Twilight by Stephenie Meyer. I read Twilight not when the movies were coming out, because I was kind of young. I want to say when I was in like middle school, I read Twilight and watched all the movies. And my best friend and I have a tradition of watching the movies once a year. We don't hate watch them, because at this point we actually like them, and they're so cringy that we just love the cringe, I guess. So I wanted to reread the books to see if they're as cringy as the movies, or if it's just like the actor's portrayal of them, or like, I don't know, I kind of just wanted to remind myself of like what swept up all of America to be obsessed with Twilight. Then I have Meet the Benedettos by Katie Coutungo? Sorry, I can't pronounce it. I follow A Paperback Life on Instagram, and she highly recommends this. And when I was at the airport, I was looking through their airport selection, and they had this book. And come to find out, I thought it was because the family featured in this book is like a reality TV family. So at first I kind of like put it aside, because I was like, okay, Kardashians in a book. But it's actually a Pride and Prejudice retelling, so I thought that was interesting. So Meet the Benedettos, the Once Upon a Broken Heart series by Stephanie Garber. There are 2 out right now, which I believe is Once Upon a Broken Heart and the Ballad. No, is it Ballad? Let's see. Once Upon a Broken Heart. The second one is The Curse for True Love, I think is what it's called. I don't remember. I think that is what it's called. The Curse for True Love is what the second book is called. Let's find out really quickly. No, it's called Wait, there's 3? Oh, there's 3. I thought there was only 2 and the third one's coming out, but there's 3. So it's Once Upon a Broken Heart, The Ballad of Never After, and A Curse for True Love. Granted, I don't know if I read those in the correct order. I think that I did. But I want to read that series by Stephanie Garber. Right now, I have Caraval on my shelf, and I'm anticipating liking that book. The Caraval trilogy is 3 books. I can't remember what they're called. I think it's like Caraval, Legendary, and something else. The finale, maybe. And so that's actually the next one on my list by Stephanie Garber. But this one is a romantasy series, Once Upon a Broken Heart series, and I've seen a lot of people say that they really, really liked it. This is another one of those where it's currently out in hardback, and I'm kind of waiting for the paperback to come out, and also for me to like I'm kind of waiting almost for a lull in my fantasy romantasy mood reading desire, so that I can pick this one up and just be really wowed by it, because a lot of people seem to really, really like it. This one's been on my list a few times, but Babble and The Poppy War by R.F. Kuang. I bought those in my Barnes & Noble's haul, and I just don't think I'm going to be able to get around to them by the end of this year, because they're kind of thick. And somebody actually commented on one of my other videos. They were like, if you're trying to read the 10 books that I had left for my Goodreads challenge, they were like, if you're trying to read 10 books by the end of the year, Babble is not the place to start. So I think I'm going to save those for next year. Gilded and Cursed by Marissa Meyer. This is a Rumpelstiltskin retelling, and Marissa Meyer is the same author of the book Heartless that I really, really loved, which is an Alice in Wonderland retelling. And like I said, Marissa Meyer is one of the few authors that, kind of what I was talking about before, was able to build the story and also build the plot, and I think that has a lot to do with the fact that it's a retelling and not her own necessarily like original idea. But I'm glad to see that she has a retelling that's in 2 parts. So Gilded and Cursed is a Rumpelstiltskin retelling. Part of Your World by Amy Jimenez. I read Yours Truly, which is apparently the second book in that series. I think it's like an interconnected series. So I want to go back and read the first one, Part of Your World. Inheritance Games by Jennifer Lynn Barnes. There are 3 original books in the Inheritance Games series, and then there's a spin-off which is called The Brothers Hawthorne that just came out this past year. I've heard incredible things about Jennifer Lynn Barnes. She is the author. One of her other series kind of popped off earlier this year, and I can't remember what it is called, but it was about like those kids who are FBI recruits and who basically like solve mysteries or catch criminals or something with all of their skills. But the Inheritance Game had been on my radar for a while, and then when that series kind of popped off, it reminded me that I had wanted to read Jennifer Lynn Barnes. So I'm going to commit, hopefully, to reading that next year. Rootbound by Tara Dewitt. this is actually, I read Funny Feelings by Tara Dewitt, and I liked her writing style, but I wasn't sure that I was going to read more books by her. And then she came out with a Christmas novella. It's called Christmas Presents. And I'm not going to lie, y'all, I read it so that I could speed up my Goodreads goal. It was like maybe 40 pages in 3 parts. But it's basically like the Christmas after the books and her 3 previous books end. So it was Funny Feelings, Rootbound, and The Co-op. And so these are like short little novellas of each of the characters' Christmas after their book ends. And when I read it because I obviously know about Fee and Meyer, and I wanted to see, you know, how they did Christmas with Hazel and that stuff, and it was cute. But when I was reading the first couple, which of course I can't recall their names, but when I was reading about the first couple, which is the couple from Rootbound, I was like, oh, I actually really like this dynamic. So it's kind of a backwards way to go about finding a book, but I think I'm going to end up liking Rootbound by Tara Dewitt. Then I have the Housemade series by Frida McFadden. I'm currently reading the Housemade right now on Kindle Unlimited. I'm not really in a mystery thriller mood right now, but it's just something about this character is so enticing and intriguing to me. So I'm going to try and read that book hopefully by the end of this week, and hopefully I'll enjoy the way that story wraps up, and we'll continue the rest of that series because there's three books in that series. Persuasion by Jane Austen. I say this, I've been trying to get through it since the beginning of the year. I watched that movie, the one on Netflix with Dakota Johnson, and I liked the concept of the movie, which means I liked the plot of the book. I didn't really like the way that they went about making that movie, but that's neither here nor there. So I know that I'm going to like it. I just have to read it. And right now I'm in the very beginning where you're getting all the context and it's very boring and I keep falling asleep. But I know I'm going to like it because I love Pride and Prejudice. And this one's so much shorter. I love Jane Austen. So Persuasion by Jane Austen. I also want to read Withering Heights by Emily Bronte. I'm not even gonna lie right now. I'm gonna type it in and see what it's about because I have no idea what it's about. So I believe this is a love triangle. I'm just skimming the synopsis now. I've heard of this book before, but I haven't obviously even read the synopsis. But yeah, Withering Heights by Emily Bronte. Then so this is kind of like the classics section of my 2024 TBR, so it was Persuasion, Withering Heights. I want to read Fahrenheit 451 by Ray Bradbury, which is considered a modern classic. I just never got around to reading it in middle school and high school and everybody else did, so I want to read that. I want to reread 1984 by George Orwell because, the digital age, which is also considered a modern classic, and another one by him is Animal Farm, which I never got around to reading as well, so I want to read those by George Orwell. And then the last one on my 2024 TBR is Little Women by Louisa May Alcott. I read Little Women, oh my gosh, I want to say I was in like 5th or 6th grade. Like I was very young, and I remember because I had this old, really beat up copy that obviously smelled amazing because it smelled like old books. But I remember finishing it, and there was, I don't know if it's a spin-off or it technically is a spin-off, and it's called, let me make sure, yeah, it's called Jo's Boys by Louisa May Alcott, and it's basically what Jo's life is like after Little Women. Oh, hold on, confusion. This says a sequel to Little Men. Oh, that's so funny. I never read Little Men. I didn't even know Little Men exists. I just had read Little Women and Jo's Boys. How interesting. But basically, in Jo's Boys, her and her husband run this, like, school/orphanage for young little boys, and it was just so endearing and so cute. And I've been watching the Greta Gerwig, well, I've been seeing clips of it, which reminded me of how much I liked the Greta Gerwig version of the Little Women movie, and it just sparked my desire to reread Little Women and just kind of like immerse myself in that world. But yeah, Little Women by Louisa May Alcott. And with that is my aspirational 2024 TBR. So let me know what's on you guys' 2024 TBR. If you've read any of these and you do not recommend them, please let me know. And obviously, alternatively, if you have read them and you love them, let me know so I can maybe bump them up to the top of my TBR and read those first. And thank you guys for being here. And I mean, this is going to go up, like, I think maybe 2 weeks before the new year. But if you don't see it when I post it, you see it a little bit later, Happy New Year. I hope this year is filled with lots of love, happiness, joy, success, and all the good things. Bye.